In this video, I'm going to show you how to work out equivalent fractions using the written method. So previously I showed you the pictorial method where we drew the bars and did some shading so you could look at visually whether or not fractions were equivalent, whether they were the same. And today we're just going to use numbers. So we're going to be writing and we are going to be using our times tables. So starting off, we will have the fraction 3/5. We're just going to go back and label this fraction just so we can make sure we are familiar with what each term is. So on top we have the numerator, and the numerator tells us the parts we have or parts needed, and on the bottom the number we have is the denominator. Denominator, and this number tells us our total parts. Okay, so that's our total. When we were drawing, we used the denominator to dictate how large our bar models were, and that just made it easier for us to draw them to scale. Now we're writing, we just need to remember that number because the word denominator comes in handy when we are comparing fractions, which will happen tomorrow, or even when you are multiplying to make your equivalents. So we have 3/5, and we want to know whether or not 3/5 is equivalent to the same as 6/10. So if we set it up down here, now we've labelled it. So 3/5 equals 6/10. Now we want to know if this is true. Okay, so I'm going to write that question. Is this true? I'm going to show you how to work it out. So whilst you're working out equivalent fractions using the written method, we're going to draw some arrows. So we're going to have a different colour to be able to see that. And what you have to do is you have to make sure that the golden rule is what you do to the top, you always do to the bottom and vice versa. So you will only ever do the same process on top and bottom. You will never use different numbers. So what you do to the top, you do to the bottom. You do to the... And as long as you remember that, you can't go far wrong, really. So if I just put a little star there, that is our golden rule. So what we need to do is we need to work out the relationship between these new numbers. So between 5 and 10, what is the relationship? So what is the link? Well, I know that 5 times 2 makes 10. Now, whilst I'm working out equivalent fractions, I know I have to do to the top what I do to the bottom. Now, I've multiplied the bottom by 2. I've multiplied 5 by 2, and that made 10. If this fraction is going to be correct, if it is in fact going to be equivalent, when I multiply 3 by 2, it must make 6. If it makes 6, we know it's true, and if it makes a different number, we know it's false. So 3 times 2 is in fact 6. So I know that 3/5 is the same as, is equivalent to 6/10. Now just to explain that further, I'm going to show you an example where it is false, it isn't correct, and hopefully that will reiterate that message. So if I go back to the crayon and we'll do 3/5 again. And I'm going to claim it is equivalent to 17/25. So we're going to ask ourselves the question, is this true? Okay, is this true? We're going to go back to our golden rule. And our golden rule is what you do to the top, you must do to the bottom. So to turn 5 into 25, we have to times it by 5. 5 times 5 makes 25. So if this is going to be correct, we have to times 3 by 5 because you do the same to the top as you do the bottom. Now 3 times 5, what is 3 times 5? We know that 3 times 5 is 15. So in fact, this is not correct. We know that if we were to correct this, it should be 3 times 5 is 15, so it should in fact be 15 over 25.